Hey you, it's me. Today, let's take a break from estimating time complexities and let's evaluate different paths for your future. This video is going to be for people who are considering going to coding boot camps, whether it's to completely career shift from scratch or to fill in any gaps in knowledge after self-studying for some amount of time. So, some background on me. I actually taught myself JavaScript in 2019, coming from a completely non-technical background. After finishing the web dev course on Codecademy, I wasn't sure how to translate my new skills into projects or anything that would actually make me employable. So I elected to attend an in-person bootcamp that was over Zoom. After I finished that bootcamp, the market for juniors was still really dry because COVID was still shutting everything down. So I actually attended a second bootcamp. This one was self-paced and honestly just way different than my first experience. So because I had two vastly different experiences, I thought it might be helpful for other people if I just compiled a list of things to research or think about when trying to find a coding bootcamp that's right for you. My first disclaimer is that this is in no way a completely exhaustive list of everything that you should know about a program. But I do think that this is a great starting off point and will definitely lead to more in-depth conversations that you have with any admissions officers that you talk to from each individual bootcamp. I'm also not here to tell you that these questions have a right or a wrong answer. That all is going to depend on you, your background, what you want, and what you're willing to spend in terms of time and money. And finally, while a bachelor's degree in computer science is 100% not required to become a software engineer and to work at some pretty big name companies, I don't want to downplay that this is a difficult path to choose. You can absolutely have a long and fulfilling career just from self-studying or going to a boot camp, but you're going to have to put in a lot of work to get your first opportunity. Because in the job market, you will be competing against people with bachelor's degrees and internships. So just because a boot camp is a quicker path does not make it an easier path. So the first question that you need to answer on your own is a coding boot camp right for you? You need to evaluate your current circumstances and abilities. The people who thrive in this bootcamp environment are people who can catch on quickly, have some prior coding knowledge, and are able to push themselves past any hurdles. As far as the fundamentals go, you will have a much easier time if you understand APIs, what object-oriented programming is, and how to write variables and functions in at least one language. These bootcamps have to cram a lot of material into just a few short months, so you don't have the benefit of taking a month to go over just a simple concept. However, the challenges that you face will not be linear. I would say that the beginning of the course is often the hardest part because you're dealing with so many new concepts at once. So if you're able to push yourself past that initial learning curve and come out on the other end still enjoying writing code, then you have an excellent chance at actually becoming a good programmer. However, if you're someone that needs more one-on-one attention or more time to get new material cemented into your brain, then either a longer form bootcamp or more traditional school might be a better path for you. I think boot camps get recommended a lot for people who either have like an unrelated STEM degree or are just really good at programming naturally. But I genuinely believe that boot camps can be beneficial to people from all different backgrounds and skill abilities. You just want to make sure that your boot camp is setting you up for success as much as possible and that you are pushing yourself through whatever hard times you're having with the material. If you're still evaluating whether or not software engineering is right for you, then I suggest looking at like meetup.com and finding a whiteboarding group or just a coding group in general. These are groups where people might solve leak code problems together or just talk about the industry. This would be a fantastic chance for you to see how people think and approach problems and get to pick the brains of people who are working in the industry. You can ask them any questions that you have. Question number 2. Does this bootcamp teach things that are relevant to your end goal? There are a ton of different bootcamps that all focus on different disciplines. For example, there are machine learning bootcamps, data science bootcamps, UI, UX, and software engineering. If you're looking at software engineering specific bootcamps, then you'll want to make sure that their tech stack, as in the language, framework, and tools that they teach you, is relevant and up to date to industry standards. For example, if you want to be a front-end developer, as in someone who deals with the look of an application and how a user interacts with the application, then a bootcamp that teaches JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and React will probably be the best fit for you. But if you want to be a full-stack developer, meaning someone who works on both the front end and the back end, then you should look for a bootcamp that not only teaches you JavaScript, but also Python and its frameworks, Django or Flask. Some bootcamps will teach you Ruby and its framework, Rails, making Ruby on Rails. To get a feel for what languages you should be looking for, you should go on job posting sites like LinkedIn, Dice, AngelList, and see what languages and frameworks are requested in the job descriptions. This will give you a really good idea if a certain language or framework is marketable in your area. But that's not to say that the language that you learn in your bootcamp is the only language that you'll ever need or use in your career. Part of being a software engineer is learning new skills on the job. I mean, honestly, I even landed my first job in a language that I had never used before. As long as you can understand the core concepts of data structures and communicate your thought process, then you have a really good chance at landing a junior role. You'll also want to make sure that your bootcamp is teaching you about GitHub and SQL and NoSQL databases, as those are going to be relevant in pretty much any software engineering job. Question number 3, how much does this bootcamp cost? Bootcamps can definitely range anywhere from like $5,000 to $20,000, depending on the structure, whether it's in person, online, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, or completely self-paced. But a lot of bootcamps do have payment plans or payment deferral where you don't have to pay them anything until after you land a job. And there are scholarship opportunities, especially for veterans and women. Question number 4. Does this bootcamp have an employment guarantee? A lot of bootcamps are pretty confident that you will find a job within 6 months of completing their course. Of course, this does come with some fine print, like living in a city with a strong tech presence, completing all your career track assignments, and attending check-in sessions with your career coach after you've completed your course. This job guarantee may even entitle you to a refund if you've met all their qualifications and still have not found a job within 6 months. Question number 5. Does this bootcamp have an entrance exam or some way to test out of the fundamentals? Because these bootcamps want to appeal to the largest audience possible, a lot of them advertise that you don't need any prior coding experience to gain admission. This is great for people who are starting completely fresh because that means that they'll have the chance to go over the fundamentals. And even if there is an entrance exam, it's normally more geared to see if you can follow directions and catch on quickly, as the instructions generally give you all the information that you need to complete the task. That's all great if you have no prior coding experience. But what if you've been self-studying for some amount of time and now you're past that fundamental stage? Well, some bootcamps actually will give you the opportunity to test out of the beginner section of the course. This will allow you to get to more relevant material more quickly. So, depending on where you are in your journey, some bootcamps may be more accommodating to your current knowledge and skill level than others. Question number 6. How long will this bootcamp take? Probably the most common time frame for a coding bootcamp would be 3 months. But there are plenty of programs that take longer than that. In my personal opinion, I think 3 months is the absolute minimum that you should spend in a coding bootcamp, especially if you're brand new to this material. If you're already gifted at programming and you're just looking for help on networking, then maybe something shorter than 3 months would be right for you. But for the average person, this is just not enough time to take in these concepts. This is where you need to evaluate your own timeline. Can you spend 6 months learning this material? Can you afford to spend 9 months or a year without getting a job? All of these options have their own pros and cons, and you just need to evaluate what fits best into your own circumstances. For me, my first bootcamp was 3 months, and I thought that that was enough time. I didn't want to spend 6 months or 9 months learning this material because I had already spent a year self-studying. So in my head, that was just more time that I was going to spend unemployed. However, at the end of my 3-month bootcamp, I was unemployed, and I was unemployed for months after. But that was a personal problem of mine because other people from my 3-month boot camp were able to find employment right after we finished the course. I think if you're really good at networking and you have a lot of time to work on passion projects that are interesting, then a shorter boot camp can absolutely be worth it. Question number 7. What is the structure of this boot camp? This question goes tandem with our previous question. And by structure, I mean, will you be meeting every weekday, in person or on Zoom, from like 9 to 5? And your day will be sectioned up with lectures and code-alongs with your cohort mates? Or will you be logging on to an online portal whenever you want to and work through the material on your own? And how is all this material split up over the course of the program? For example, if we had a 3-month-long boot camp, what if we spent the first month learning the fundamentals with JavaScript and we completed a project? Then the second month we learned a second language like Python and we worked on a group project. And we finished the boot camp in our 3rd month by going over data structures and algorithms and completing a final project. I'm not trying to say that this is the exact optimal structure of a course. I'm just giving you an example of how it might be sectioned up. So when talking to your admissions officers, take notes on how they say your days will be spent and what the overall structure of the course looks like. See if any of them touch on specific aspects that you feel you would benefit the most from. You'll also want to find out how the material is going to be presented to you and if you'll have access to it after completion. Will you be watching videos? Will you be reading articles? Will you have lectures from your instructors? Will you have code-alongs where they're telling you what to do? Or will you have just some vague details and you have to build a program based off of their specifications? All of these are totally valid ways to learn and they all have their own merits. But maybe you know how you learn best. It's totally okay to seek out a program that best matches what works for you. Question number 8. What does the career track portion look like? I don't think I've heard of a bootcamp that doesn't have a career track. And this is because they want to guarantee your eligibility for employment. But they can only do that if they make sure that you're doing a couple things, like having a resume that's up to industry standards and constantly networking. Also, I have heard of some boot camps that have partnerships with like job fairs and staffing agencies. So finding employment after finishing your course may be easier because they have a pool of willing employers available. But keep in mind that your career coaches are not there to do the hard work for you. You will still need to do your own research on roles and companies, populate your LinkedIn, create your resume, and network. They are there to give you encouragement and feedback though. But honestly, finding your first job is probably the biggest hurdle, especially with how many junior developers enter the market every single day. Although it may sometimes feel like you're constantly pushing this huge boulder up a hill, it's not an impossible task. Just one that requires perseverance, dedication, and a little creativity. You can also request the placement rate for any of these boot camps, but I want to warn you to take any number that they give you with a huge grain of salt, because it's most likely heavily inflated. For example, a 99% placement rate is pretty dubious and does not tell the whole story. So if you can, try to get some context on where that number actually comes from. Question number 9. What's the cohort size and how many instructors and TAs will you have? Once again, I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer to this question, but generally speaking, the smaller the class size, the more individual help each member of the class can receive. I'd say that a class size of 15 or smaller and 2 or more instructors is probably a good starting place. For my in-person bootcamp, we had 2 dedicated instructors and 2 full-time TAs. So while sometimes there was a little bit of a line to get help on a project when you were stuck, someone was eventually always available to help out. I'd say anything over 15 classmates is probably pushing it in terms of how much attention you can actually get from your instructors. We also had office hours, which are a great resource for when you're working on something outside of your normal class hours. You'll probably want to inquire when office hours are and how much support they'll provide, because you want to make sure that it fits with your personal schedule. If you're taking part in a self-paced program, then it's worth finding out if you'll have a dedicated mentor. This is someone that you could meet with once a week to go over your assignments and to ask them any questions that you have. I was paired with a mentor in my second boot camp, and I would say that that was the most rewarding part of either boot camp for me personally. It really boosted my confidence, and it helped me learn so much more than the curriculum was teaching me. Question number 10. How many portfolio projects are you going to build? I think finishing one of these courses with 2 or 3 really good portfolio projects is the bare minimum. I personally added a lot of my practice projects to my GitHub repo. Like, for example, we made a Pokemon deck, and everyone's project for that looked completely different. So because it wasn't just a basic cookie cutter application, I felt like it was a really good show of my skills and creativity. So I added it to my GitHub. These projects are going to be really important when it comes to interviews and job applications because they'll actually supplement for your lack of real-world work experience. And they'll give you relevant things to talk about in your interviews. And it's worth making sure that you'll get to deploy these projects to some cloud hosting site. Because even though deployments are not part of every software engineer's everyday task, it's a valuable process to be familiar with. And our final question to consider, number 11, where do the alumni of these boot camps work? Utilizing LinkedIn, try to find some of the previous attendees and evaluate what types of jobs they were able to land after they completed this boot camp. One thing to look out for is an abundance of contracting companies, normally referred to as witch. Here, I've listed out the witch companies and 2 additional contracting companies. The reason why you'll want to be aware of these companies is because they operate in a unique way. I'm not here to say that these companies are bad, and if you get hired at them, then you're a bad software engineer. In fact, they can actually offer you a lot of experience working on tons of different projects. But you do need to do some research on your own and see if their structure and reputation is something that works for you. Some people find them predatory and misleading, while others had a great experience and came out a much more well-rounded developer. But back to looking at people's LinkedIn profiles. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. Let them know that you're a prospective attendee and ask them any questions that you have about the bootcamp, or if there's anything that they wish they knew about the bootcamp before attending. But don't take it personally if they don't respond. That's going to happen a lot, and it's completely normal. It doesn't say anything about you. They just aren't responding. Okay, I know all those questions probably seem like a lot to think about. And as I said before, that's probably not everything that you should find out about a boot camp, but it's a really good starting place. And as we were going through those questions, I hope that you were starting to think about what your ideal answer would be. And remember to take every answer that you get, whether it's from an alumni or someone that works at the boot camp, with a grain of salt, because everyone is going to have a different experience. I really enjoyed my bootcamp experiences. I think they taught me a lot and they gave me some really great marketable skills. And they gave me the confidence and the courage to know that software engineering was the right choice for me. If there's anything on this list that you think I left off and would actually be really important to know about a bootcamp, please let us know in the comments. And remember, every senior developer was a junior at some point, so we all had to start somewhere. And honestly, a lot of where people fail to get interviews, especially in the beginning, is because they have a bad resume. So working on interesting projects and getting some nice buzzwords into your resume will get you into the initial round for interviews. I know this video is a little different than what we normally cover, but I just wanted to get this information out there in case it helps someone. So if you choose to go the bootcamp route, good luck. I hope that this helps give you some clarity and some confidence when evaluating your different choices. I know this was a little bit different than what we normally do, and next week we'll be back on our regular data structures and algorithm track. So if there's any algorithm, pattern, or problem on LeetCode that you want to go over, let me know in the comments down below. And from me to you, have a great day. I'm gonna sneeze. I think bootcamp... Then you should look for bootcamps that not only teach JavaScript, but also Python and its accompanying frameworks. Accompanying. You'll also want to make sure that Question number 5. Does this bootcamp have an entrance? Question number 5. Does this bootcamp have an entrance? Does this boot camp have an entrance exam? There was a car accident last night. And even if there is an entrance, I'm doing really good.